Hi, my name's Mark Stallard. Welcome to Little Green Man. And today I'm going to talk about something that has been bothering me for a very long time, long before I could even vote, when I started to find out things about the political system that I was living in back in England. The system here in Canada isn't that different. But it was the whole idea of you voting for someone um, and they're in for 4 years or 5 years or whatever the period is, and they're in and they're stuck there. It's like they can do what they want, how they want, with almost with no um, repercussions. And if they do something you don't like, well, too bad. You have a choice. You can vote them out next time, but that could be another 4 or 5 years away. It's for me, it always seemed like it was a kind of dictatorship where you had no choice but to take follow the lead of the people that are in power. Okay, so it may not be a dictatorship, might be a strong word, but it's basically someone is in power and you can't get them out. And maybe if there's someone else you can vote for, well, then you can, but probably not. Incumbents tend to stay in. So the problem here is that there's a system where you really have no time for buyer's remorse. If you did vote for someone, realize that they'd lied, or if you realized that they'd done something, they were doing something wrong, contrary to what they ran on, you're screwed. You can't back out of it. There's no way of pushing them out, or replacing them, or even getting them to do what you want them to do, unless it's close to an election and you're threatened to not vote for them. And if you can get enough people involved, maybe they'll listen. But oh, it gets really difficult. I mean, particularly when we're looking at political parties. You've got a choice between, yes, we can choose between various political parties. I mean, there are commentators in the US that are complaining that there are only two parties there. But the reality is, here in Canada and in the UK as well, and other liberal democracies, really you only have two parties that really seem to count. And there has to be something that really goes wrong in order for the third party to even have a chance, let alone the fourth or fifth party and the smaller parties. So what we're looking at then is you've got a choice between a group of policies, a plan, by one party, so a complete plan of policies that they have, which they will use to draft laws and legislations. And then there'll be the second party that will have its same idea. They'll have a whole load of policies that will eventually become laws. And it's kind of like an old-fashioned, or becoming old-fashioned TV plan. You sign up and you say, oh, I want television, to your TV company, sure, or MTS we have here, and here's your package. You've got these 15, 20 channels, and you're stuck with it. You can't choose the one or two that you want. Now that's changed recently in recent years, but the idea is the same. Is if you want a high minimum wage, and you vote for that particular party, but then they have, in order to get that, then you have to go with the other policies that you might not really like very much, or for that matter, you might not even be aware of. So you're stuck with a package of policies, many of them that you, if you were aware of what they were, you probably wouldn't agree with, and you're stuck with this package for 4 years. It's a 4-year contract, um, and it's a really frustrating place to be. So when you actually vote for your political party, then you're not voting for someone to represent you in Parliament or in your local legislature. You're actually voting for the party's representative. So which party do you want in power? And that person that's in power doesn't represent you, doesn't represent me, they represent the party. Now, as long as the policies are good and for the most part are the policies that will benefit you, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But it still comes down to the fact is that you'll have maybe one, two, maybe three parties of packages to choose from, and you better hope that they're all those policies are good and will benefit you. Now the trouble is, how do you really know what's going on with policies that your particular party has? I've looked around on several political parties' websites, and there's very few of them have a list of policies. None of them say these are our policies. Bang, 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 bang. You can read into them inside and out and backwards before you do some research. You can't do that. Most people don't have that on there. Maybe as a lead up to an election, there'll be a platform, and you can read some very high level points on it. And that's about it. Once the election's done, that stuff seems to come down. And so we really are just left with an illusion of choice because you can't pick for the policy. here and there. You can't say I want your representative to vote yes on this policy, yes on this piece of legislation, and no on another piece of legislation, if the party has decided that this is the policies that they are going to implement. And we kind of get a little bit stuck. And part of the problem too is that everyone is so busy. We're working 40 hours a week, maybe spending another 4 to 8 hours a day working on the house, cutting the grass, whatever you do. Leisure, maybe you want to just sit down and relax for a bit in front of the television, and then you sleep for another 8 hours or so, and it starts again. You don't really have the time to look into this stuff, so you kind of have no option, or we have no option, but just to give up and let this small group of people who decide on these policies, or certainly who develop the policies, and hand over our freedom and hand over the ruling of ourselves, the true democracy, to a small group of people. And so this is where we come to, where I get to, is the idea of proportional representation. While definitely it is true some of the first past the post is really not a particularly good way of picking a representative, because it's, someone can maybe 20%, if you've got enough parties, there are enough people running for that position. I mean, 10, 15, 20% could be enough to get a majority vote, with the majority of people not being represented. So if you're going to do ranked choice voting or something along those lines, then you will be far more represented, but not by individual policies, not by individual pieces of legislation that you could use pick a la carte. Rather, you get proportional representation on the big group of policies that a political party has put together for your convenience. And so that's fine. As long as those parties are really, those policies are evidence-based, and they are they do work together to make your lives and my life better, then that's fine. But we're still left to voting for a party rather than the individual who is going to be responsible to us, the people that are responsible to the party. So proportional representation then it really reason why politicians don't seem to be in North America, and don't seem to be wanting to get into this and push that direction, because it does take some of the control that the parties have over the political system. Justin Trudeau ran on a platform, the Liberals ran on a platform of proportional representation, and he went through an entire put a big committee together. They went through a whole series of different kinds of proportional representation, and they came out with a recommendation, and they said not unilaterally, sorry, there was representatives from pretty much every party, and they agreed that the ranked choice voting isn't the best one, and here's another one. And Justin Trudeau says, nope, we're not going to do that, because ranked choice voting benefits the centre party more than anyone else. And that was the one he seemed to want to go to. He didn't say this in public, but that is obviously the centrist party was the one, and his Liberals are seen as centrist, even though they are quite far neoliberally right. And so he made an authoritarian decision, ironically, saying it is my decision to make, and there will be no proportional representation from the Liberals if they try and run it again. They are likely to lose the election, because that could be something that would say, you promised us and you backed out of it already. Why would we trust you again? We wouldn't. So I would be stunned if they tried again. So proportional representation in Canada, at least for the short term, is dead. So where do we go from here? I mean, what can we actually do that will benefit us then, if party politics is so weak, and actually it really is quite corruptible, not necessarily in the bribery sense, but it's corruptible in that you have a relatively small group of people that develop the policies, a larger group of people in the party vote for those policies and put them into the platform, and everybody else then has to live by those policies. You don't really get a say. Now, the future of this then is what I would say, and I don't have any firm answers, and I don't have any real a real plan on how to implement this, but I've got one point to make here, is that in order to make the party representative, the a member of the provincial parliament or the member of parliament or whatever the elected official is that if the ridings were small enough and you knew the person that was in that position of power, you could go knock on the door, tap, tap. Hey, Jack, what the hell are you doing? You voted the wrong way on that piece of legislation and now I'm out of work. You could go and do that if you knew him personally or her personally. But as it stands now in Manitoba, provincially, there are about 1.28 million people living in Manitoba. Now, those aren't all of voting age, but they are all affected by whoever gets into power. So we're looking at 57 ridings, and so 1.2 million divided by 57 ridings is approximately 22,500 people for one representative. Do you know who your representative? Maybe you know by name. Do you know where his office is? Well, I know where mine is, but that's because I'm interested in politics, obviously, and you probably do because you're watching political videos. So you probably know where yours are. But ask your friends, ask your neighbour, do they know who their representative is and where their office is? The answer is probably not, and they're probably not really that interested. But if they were living on the same block as you, well, then that changes the things entirely. So what I would say is things that we can do is to make those ridings way smaller, maybe take them down to 10% of that size. Yes, it would mean there will be more ridings, and maybe there would be a cost in having full-time representatives. But then again, we got some. I don't have a full plan on this one, but we have got way too many people represented by way too few people. And if we can bring those, take those ridings and reduce them to just a fraction of the size that they are, maybe even down to 2 or 3 blocks, maybe, where you have little smaller councils that would then elect someone, and then there'll be that group of areas in the city that would then vote, of those voted representatives, pick 2 or 3 that will go and take a seat, something along those lines. And then you could actually be in a position of just having a couple of hundred people in your riding, and rather than needing a political party, you would actually have a neighbour who would sit there. And that neighbour would then vote according to the needs or the wants of the people, the real people, and not to a particular party. So you don't need then to pick a package of policies. You would just then be dealing with each issue as it arises. And then maybe there will be an opportunity to have a vote of no confidence if someone is voting clearly against the will of his smaller constituents, and then they could maybe put a vote of no confidence and replace them with someone else. Because they're supposed to be representing us, the people. And if they are just going to go ahead with their own agenda, well, then they're not representing us at all. And it's not really fair that the only person that can actually take people out of power are the people that already have the power. So if the legislative assembly is going to be dissolved because there's a problem, only the lieutenant governor can do that. The Queen's representative can do it, but we cannot do it as the people, not even to a single person. I mean, there are probably some political routes you can take, but there's really, I've not heard of it happening. So there's an idea. We'll think that through. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, put some comments. I'll be glad to hear what you have to say. Maybe there's an aspect of this I haven't considered, but I think it'll be a good place to start. Let's talk about it. Let's have some better ideas to fix a system that is so easily corruptible and so completely out of our control. And I don't want to have to wait 4 or 5 years in order to get change from a despot that wants to take away social services, or that wants to take minimum wage and drop it through the floor, or some other economic policies that are going to destroy us. So maybe we can take our liberal democracy and turn it into an actual democracy. Little Green Man. This is the back door to the Manitoba legislature. Now, if you hit the subscribe button now, hit the notification bell, then you won't be surprised when they try to stick something up your back door.